up, you guys? My name is Aubrey, this is my channel, and in today's video, I'm going to be addressing one of the questions that I get asked most often, and that is the question of what happens whenever my cars are in a wreck or are totaled on the Turo platform. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down some of the things that do happen whenever your car is in an accident on Turo, some of the best practices so that you end up ahead when this does happen, and some of the things to keep in mind. So let's get started. Now, for those of you who don't know what Turo is a peer-to-peer car sharing platform. Basically, what this means is that people that have a car and they want to make money from that car, they can list that car on Turo and make money from people renting it from them. It is a really cool concept and it's really been exploding over the last few years. Now, as you can expect, whenever people rent your car, there are of course accidents that happen. And as a result, there are days and times where people wreck and sometimes even total your vehicles because they're in an accident. And so then that begs the question of, well, what happens then? What happens whenever your cars are in an accident? And that's a good question. So that's what I want to address today. But before you can really understand exactly what happens in the case of a total loss or in an accident, you first need to understand how Turo's insurance coverage works, or what they call protection packages. Now, Turo offers their Turo host protection packages. And what this means is that a Turo host can opt in of one of the few protection packages that Turo offers. These protection packages vary in coverage and cost, but basically how it works is depending on the protection package you choose, Turo will take a percentage of all of your earnings every single month. And in return for those earnings, they will provide you insurance coverage in the case of an accident. For me personally, I'm on the 75% plan, which means everything I make on Turo is split in two parts, 25 to 75. Turo gets 25%, I get 75%, but in exchange, I get covered with Turo and their insurance. So in the case of an accident, for me specifically, I am covered in all instances of accidents except for wear and tear, meaning door dings, slight scratches, basically anything that's under 3 inches would not be covered under this protection plan. But I'm covered for all major accidents, all major damages, and of course, all total losses. The only thing I have to do is pay a $250 deductible. This means that, for example, if a guest was to cause $1,000 worth of damage to my car, Turo would pay out $750 because I would have to pay a $250 deductible. So they would take the total amount that the damage is worth, they would deduct my deductible from that amount, and then they would pay me the difference. In this case, it would be $750 out of a $1,000 claim. But Turo actually has a number of different protection plans available. The one that I'm on, the 75% plan, certainly isn't the only one available, and I'm not even going to necessarily argue that it's the best one. It's just the best one for me and my fleet. But if you're interested in learning more about protection packages, I will include a link down to Turo's website in the description below. I will also include a link down to the car sharing masterclass, which is my car sharing course, and in that course, I discuss protection plans in very great detail and which ones are good, which ones are bad, and how to calculate which one is the best for you. If you use the code PROTECTION, you can get $25 off that course. But in general, whenever there's an accident with a vehicle on Turo, there will be different steps that you'll need to take depending on the severity of the accident. And for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about two different examples. We're going to talk about the example of a car being drivable, meaning it was just in a minor accident involving either a tire, a fender, a bumper, body panels, whatever the case is. The second example we'll talk about is a total loss, meaning the car was totaled, it was not drivable, and it had to be taken to a salvage yard or a tow yard. In this first example, the example of minor drivable damage, the first step that you would need to do is you would need to contact Turo and file a claim. Then you would need to fill out a number of forms that Turo will provide you, giving information about the accident or the damage that has occurred to your car. At this point in time, you'll need to give details of what happened or what you know about the accident. You'll need to submit photos of the damage. You'll need to give information about who to contact or where the car is currently located, and you'll also need to give information on what your plans are to fix the car. When this type of damage occurs to any of my vehicles, I typically will wait to file a damage claim until I'm able to assess the damage in person. I will wait until the car is returned, I will wait until I can take my own photos, until I can assess the damage with my own two eyes, and until I can have my fiance and my business partner HP look at the damage as well. I typically will not file a damage claim until I view the damage because I want to make sure to have an understanding of what exactly went wrong before I go to Turo and ask for reimbursement for that. The second scenario here that I want to talk about is a total loss. And this is what happens whenever your car is in an accident and the car is deemed totaled, meaning it cannot be repaired. Typically speaking, whenever you file a damage claim for a total loss, you won't actually ever get the chance to see the vehicle while filing the damage claim. In fact, more often than not, if your car is in a total loss, you may never get the chance to see that car again. Now, in my Turo career, I have had a number of different total losses, and all of them have been handled pretty much the exact same way. The first step of the process is to once again file the damage claim. You'll need to go onto Turo's website, click file a claim, and then from there you'll have to answer questions. In the case of a total loss, you probably won't have a whole lot of information because more often than not, you've never laid your two eyes on the damage that has occurred, and you're just going based off of what the guest has told you. This can sometimes make it difficult when filling out these forms, but that means you just have to try your best to answer the forms to the best of your ability, and if they're not 100% accurate, then that's typically okay. Then once you've filed the damage claim successfully, Turo is going to give you one of two options. They're going to give you the option to either work out the damage claim with the guest. This means that rather than going through Turo's insurance process, you will communicate with the guest and try to get a settlement out of them directly, meaning the guest will just pay you out of pocket for the damage that they caused to your car. The second option that you'll get is to deal with the damage through Turo, so meaning have Turo pay for the damage and have them collect the money from the guest. Now, the way that Turo phrases these two options is more often than not, Turo is going to try to persuade you to work it out directly with the guest. The reason is because there's less liabilities on Turo's end by having you work directly with the guest. That means Turo doesn't have to pay you, Turo doesn't have to deal with the guest, Turo doesn't have to collect the payment. There's just a lot less downside whenever a host decides to work with a guest directly rather than working through Turo. But I'd highly advise against ever working with a guest, especially on high-end, high-dollar claims. The only time I ever work with a guest directly is if the guest has caused damage that is equal to less than $250, meaning less than my deductible. And the only reason why I go this route with guests is because if I don't work it out with the guest directly, I'm not going to get paid anyways because my deductible is $250. For example, if a guest causes minor damage to my car and the total damage is equal to $100, Turo won't pay me anything because my deductible is $250. Turo doesn't pay you anything unless it is above the deductible that you're required to pay. So if you have damage that is done to your car and it is less than your deductible, then it makes sense to work it out with the guest directly. But if it is a severe accident, if it is severe damage, then I would advise you to never work with the guest directly because there's simply too much downside on your end. And so though Turo may push hosts into trying to work with guests directly, I'd highly advise not to, as there's simply too much risk and too much downside on your part. So then ultimately, once a damage claim is submitted and once you've decided to work with Turo rather than the guest, then at that point it's just a waiting game. You'll typically be contacted by a Turo representative within 48 to 72 hours. At that point, they'll ask you about the accident, they'll ask if you know anything about the accident, anything about the damage, and you can give them your 2 cents of what happened or what you know about the incident. From there, Turo will get an estimate, and their estimate is typically based off of ACV, or actual cash value. This is something that typically comes from a database and isn't pulled on a car per car basis. So for example, if you have like a 2009 Mercedes-Benz and that Mercedes is in immaculate condition, you just replaced the whole interior, you just put a new stereo system, you just replaced a bunch of parts on the car, that's not going to really matter whenever it comes to ACV because it comes from a database based off of all of 2009 Mercedes-Benz or just all cars in general. And so they're going to find that car in that database, they're going to figure out how much that car is worth, they will then deduct any pre-existing damages that were done to the car, and then that's how much Turo will offer you. Of course, minus your deductible. So for example, let's use a 2009 Mercedes-Benz as an example. I just recently purchased a 2009 Mercedes-Benz for $6,000, so let's use my own car as an example. My Mercedes-Benz has an ACV of about $8,000. So if my Mercedes was in an accident today, Turo would probably come back to me with an $8,000 estimate of what they would owe me for that car in a total loss. But my Mercedes-Benz isn't perfect. There are scratches, dents, and some dings. And as a result, that would bring down the ACV value. So in this case, Turo may deduct another $500 from the ACV to account for pre-existing damage because ultimately Turo doesn't want to pay for damage that was already caused and already existed before the accident. So that would bring our $8,000 ACV to $7,500. But we're not done yet. We also have a $250 deductible that needs to be accounted for as well. And so in this case, that would bring our $7,500 payout to $7,250. And so in this case, it would probably be pretty realistic and a pretty accurate expectation for Turo to pay out $7,250 if my 2009 Mercedes-Benz was totaled today. Once you get your ACV and you've agreed on the amount, you'll typically get sent a bunch of of paperwork from Turo and from their third-party partners. You then have to sign that paperwork, you have to send the title over to their third-party partners, and then you have to wait for them to receive it. Once they receive it, they will then send you the money either through a paper check or through a direct deposit payment. And then from there, that's it. From there, you no longer own that car. Turo or Turo's insurance partners own the car, and it is really up to them what they do from there. Now, you guys may be thinking that this process seems way too oversimplified, and I will admit that I've oversimplified the process a bit. But if I'm being honest, if you follow the Turo terms of service, if you take photos of all of your cars and make sure that you are doing what you should be doing to an absolute T, this process will look very similar to what I've laid out today. Total losses and accidents don't have to be complicated, and the process is pretty similar regardless of the type of damage that is done to your car. And minor accidents, you would of course then need to get your car fixed, and more often than not, Turo does require some sort of inspection report. But once you do that, and once you provide that, then you can relist your car on the Turo platform. In the case of a total loss, Turo takes the keys, they buy the car from you, and then you're good to go, and you can use those funds to buy another car. Where the waters can get really muddy is whenever you're not following the terms of service, you're not doing what you should be doing, you're cutting corners, and that's where you set yourself up to fail, and you set yourself up to lose a lot of money. And that's where we've all seen those horror stories on the internet of people that have been screwed by Turo. I'm a firm believer that anybody who has flat out been screwed by Turo has probably been screwed because they did something they shouldn't have been doing. But with that being said, you guys, I wanted to make this video because this is a question that I get asked all the time, and interestingly enough, it's one I've never answered directly on the channel, so I thought it was finally time to do so. Like always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.